Currently, TF2 is being held hostage. In this video, I'll explain one way in which the game can be freed from its captors and subsequently improved. But first, let me give you a bit of context.
Sorry to ask about TF2, but what is the stream thumbnail? Sorry if this is asked already. I covered the TF2 news I had at the top of the stream. And Valve is looking to give Team Fortress franchise to third parties to continue it and solve the bot problem for them, because no one is solving it. The oh god came from the confirmation that no one is actually working on the bot problem right now, and because of the push to get Citadel done, it's actually not a concern regardless of how bad it's getting. Sorry.
Tyler McVicker, former Valve News Network, stated on a recent livestream that Valve is considering giving TF2 to third parties so they can further develop the game and even fix the many issues it has been facing lately. Even though he didn't present any evidence, and despite Tyler's very hit-and-miss record on these matters, some people believed his word and a segment of the community started freaking out about the possibility of TF2 being handed out to another company. What if the new managers only want to turn the game into a cash grab? What if they completely miss the point of TF2 and turn it into something completely unlike the game we've enjoyed and learned to love along all these years? What if they decide to remove features from the game simply because they are costly or troublesome to maintain? Those are all good questions I think should be seriously considered if such a change were to really take place. First of all, it is not a surprise to anyone that corporations seek profit, and they will do whatever it takes to maximize it. For example, why keep mod support or builds for alternative operating systems? I'm looking at you, Linux. When those things generate little to no revenue at all? Or even, why allow the community to create their own events and take control of how the game is played with custom servers and matchmaking systems? Hello there, creators.cf, UncleTopia and BalanceMod. Why not just X all that and only allow players to use proprietary systems that direct everyone to the same servers and to the same storefront? If you think about it, that's what game companies have been doing nowadays. It is becoming very rare to see new game releases with full mod support and the option to host independent community servers. And even if this new company managing TF2 wouldn't cut those features, there's still the possibility of messing up the core gameplay with misguided design choices. We saw something like that happen recently with Faceit casual system. It was an interesting proposition in its own right, but Faceit didn't get what a large part of the community understood by casual TF2, and that mistaken branding really disappointed a lot of people. What if this sort of mishap took place in a game-changing update and people didn't have the option to play the game elsewhere or to revert back easily to how the game used to be? It could really hinder TF2 in the long run and, as people fear, turn it into an unrecognizable game. Now, all those things considered, I think it would actually be better to take our chances with new management than to continue in Valve's hands. Because as is, TF2 is in a very deplorable state and Valve truly doesn't care about the game in any way. I'm even starting to think they get some sort of kick from seeing the game in this state, like it is some sort of twisted pleasure for them to see TF2 rot away. But that could be just me being delusional. Either way, here's the thing. There's something Valve could do to safely hand the game to more competent hands, while also avoiding most of those pitfalls I mentioned before. Adopt a community-driven style of development. Wait, don't rush to your keyboards yet. Let me explain what I mean. When I said at the beginning of this video that TF2 was being held hostage, I really meant it. As of now, the burden of developing TF2 can be carried solely by Valve. No one else has the clearance to push changes, fixes and updates to TF2. Even if there are competent community contributors interested on working on the game, and trust me, these wonderful people are out there, they rely solely on Valve's capacity and goodwill to check their proposed changes and commit them into the game. This closed system can be productive on more structured companies, like most game studios are, but Valve is so fickle that this style of development resulted in the dumpster fire TF2 is nowadays, a game ravaged by bots and bad actors, full of security breaches, lots of which could still be undiscovered, just waiting for some hacker to find and exploit, lacking in the performance department, and this close to becoming abandonware. All because Valve is unwilling to further maintain, support, and develop this product. But what if instead community contributors and developers could decide what changes should be pushed into the game without needing to wait on Valve's final word? Before you say this would be pure chaos or that it wouldn't work, a lot of commercial software is already developed like this, mostly on the open source side of things. For example, Blender, arguably the most popular 3D modeling software out there, supported by giants like Ubisoft and Epic Games, is developed in a similar manner. In brief, anyone can suggest changes and fixes to the software. Those propositions are then evaluated and audited by designated and trusted members of the Blender development community and, when deemed appropriate, pushed into the final product. There's a structure and a hierarchy to the process, but it isn't reliant on the fickle will of a single group of developers, because it is community-driven and open to anyone who has the know-how to participate. Another example of a successful piece of software developed in a similar manner is the Linux kernel, one of the very things that allows our cloud-based computing world to operate. Without it, you probably wouldn't even be watching this video right now. Mozilla Firefox, one of the best web browsers in regards to privacy and security, is also developed in such a manner. And for those who think such an open and community-driven development process wouldn't work for game engines, the Godot game engine, one of the fastest growing game engines on the market, is another example of successful community-driven development. It actually pains me to imagine everything we're missing out by not having such a development model for TF2. For instance, we could have already had Team Contrast 2, the improvement and bug fixing project, added to the game. I also dare to say some of the people developing the code for these pesky bots that run around in-game would feel tempted to, instead of ruining everyone's fun, investing time and effort into contributing to improving the game. After all, some of those developers already stated in the past that they do such things because they find it fun to code for the source engine. Imagine if they could put their skills to use in a more positive endeavor. I imagine some of them, even if a minority, would do just that. And before you say these bad actors would be able to troll and harm development, that would be very hard or near impossible to do. Because again, the project would be audited by the whole community of developers involved and would have to be approved by trusted maintainers before being pushed into the game. When a project is developed by its community, that doesn't mean anything gets into the project freely. What it means really is that the whole community can watch what's being developed and make decisions on what is or isn't safe or adequate to be pushed as an update. Imagine also all the good fellas at Creators.tf and Balance Mod working together to bring new content and much needed balance changes to mainstream TF2 in a tried and tested, audited and structured manner. Imagine integrating community server providers like Uncletopia, Faceit and others directly from the main game menu. The possibilities are endless. And of course, for a project like this to work, A lot of interest from a lot of different people would be required, but I don't think that would be a problem, considering there's already plenty of community projects that surely would band together if such a thing was possible. Would there be conflicts of interest in that effort? Sure, but that's what the community is for, to decide collectively on what should or shouldn't be pursued. Valve wouldn't even need to give up the profits made from the game, and they could also reward and pay contributors, much like is already done with map and cosmetic creators. All it takes is for Valve to open the development of TF2 and release from captivity this long-held hostage. Now, I'm a pessimist by conviction, and I don't think this will become a reality. I think Valve will just continue to watch TF2 rot and wither away. Because in the end, Valve sucks and is run by a bunch of egotistical people. They'd rather see a product die than having other people do their job for them. And we can really see that in the fiasco that was Artifact and Underlords, for example. Two games that were simply shelved by negligent developers who lost interest in those projects. But regardless of that, what is your opinion on this topic? Do you think a more community-driven development style would benefit TF2? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe so you don't miss my future uploads. See you next time and bye bye!